Let me like slide this on over here. Oh, you see, whenever I try to move a stack of books, it never ends well. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another video. My name is Sarah and today we are going to be finally going through my April and May reading wrap up. All the books that I read in both April and May because I did not end up doing an April reading wrap up and now it's already the end of May, so I decided to compile all the books into one video. We have 8 books to talk about and I have been just on a very intense reading kick lately. I've been loving listening to a book on the audiobooks while reading a different physical book, so I'm like reading 2 books at a time. I've been loving them. But we had a really good reading month these past 2 months. I think that I read some pretty good books these last 2 months, so I'm super excited to talk about them. And we're rolling right on into summer. I just posted my summer TBR. I am just so excited to finally have the time to get through a lot of my TBR and just really reach my 50 book at the end of the year goal. Hopefully. I'm like doing pretty good right now. I think I've read like 20-ish books so far this year, so I'm like more or less on track. So as you can you see? I don't want to like, whenever I try and pick them up, they always fall right over. So I'm just gonna zoom you in, have some nice tabs on them. There were some good books that we read these past 2 months. Alright, so first we have Hooked. I finished reading this in the middle of April, but I started in the middle of March, or the end of March. But I finally finished reading it in the middle of April. It was a 5-star read for me. This is a part of the Never After series by Emily McIntyre. It's basically fairy tale retellings where the main character is the villain. This is Peter Pan's characters and Hook is Captain Hook. He is the main character in this book. I loved all the little Easter eggs throughout here that had to do with Peter Pan. Like he called her Wendy Darling. Wendy is a love interest. He called her Wendy Darling even though her last name wasn't Darling. He had a sidekick named Smee. He lived on a boat, a houseboat called the Jolly Roger, and it was just so much fun. It's basically about how Hook is this super famous, super powerful crime lord, and he meets Wendy, who is the daughter of his enemy, Peter. It starts off where he wants to get back at Peter for something he did in the past, and he decides to like get his daughter to love him as a payback to Peter. And then I'm sure you can guess that feelings develop and the story goes from there, but he's also running a massive crime scene at the same time that the story is being told. So there are some parts that are kind of gory, so a little bit of a trigger warning there. He is a ruthless mob boss, but I really also like his backstory. We got a little insight into why he hates Peter so much, and that also relates to like crocodile, and a ticking clock is like his pet peeve. So just all the Easter eggs in here were so much fun, and I did really love what they did with the story and the characters. It did have some good quotes in here as well. Let me just read you one for fun. This is a good one. Maybe that's why she calls to me the way she does, the pitch black parts of my soul aching for her light. So you have your enemies to lovers trope in here. And is there a trope that's like the bad guy is the main character? Because that's definitely this trope as well. But yes, highly recommend this first book of the Never After series. I can't say much for the next books. I do want to read Scarred. I actually have it right here. This is the next book in the Never After series after Hooked, and I want to read this one this summer because I loved this book. So yes, that's our first book that we read in April. Another April read was Daisy Jones and the Six. I have not shut up about this book. I'm pretty sure that I have it in like 3 other videos, so I'm not gonna go super deep into it. Clearly it was a 5 stars for me. Actually initially I think I rated it like a 4.5 stars, but it doesn't leave my mind very often, and I listen to the soundtrack on repeat on Spotify, so I think it deserves its 5-star slot. This, if you don't know, is by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is the author of Malibu Rising and The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I realized that she's actually creating her own universe because there's a character in here that is mentioned in both The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and also Malibu Rising, so I kind of love when authors create their own universe within their books. So that was really fun to see a little Easter egg in there. It is about Daisy Jones, who is a very, very, very talented singer-songwriter, but she needs a band. And then it's about the Six, who is a very talented band and has a very talented lead singer, Billy, but they're missing something. And then Teddy Price, who I think he's like the record producer or something like that, he basically puts Daisy Jones and the Six together, and they become Daisy Jones and the Six, and they create a #1 hit song, the first song they write together. So it's about the birth of a rock band, sort of. Also, the short-lived extreme fame they had because they broke up, and you get the reasons behind why they broke up in here. This also is a series on Amazon Prime. It was amazing. Highly recommend you read this while listening to the audiobook. Highly recommend you watch the Prime Video series because it just makes it so much more of a realistic world. Like, I refuse to believe that this is not a real band. Like, the way that it was written was just so believable and realistic, and I loved it. And I believe it was one of the books that I mentioned in my top 5 books for their quotes video. So go head over to watch that one if you want to hear more of the amazing quotes, but they had some really good ones in here. So yes, that's our second book, 5-star read. Also in April, I read The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. This is the book 1 of the Dreamland Billionaire series. Basically, it's all the Disneyland vibes, all the Disney World vibes. It's a massive Grumpy Sunshine book. I think it was also in my favorite quotes book. I also gave it 5 stars. It was amazing. We had a really good reading month. So basically, it's about Rowan, who is one of 3 brothers that after their grandfather, who is the founder, the CEO of Dreamland, basically like a Disneyland type empire, passed away. And he tasks each of his grandsons with something to earn their inheritance and their share in the company, basically. Rowan's task is to basically take apart the Dreamland amusement park, figure out where its weaknesses are, and then make it better for the people. And he's trying to do this while he meets Zara, who's a creator, which basically is like the creativity behind the Dreamland attractions and amusement park. She's very sunshiny, he's very grumpy, and then he like begrudgingly hires her and starts working with her, and then, you know, their romance blooms from there. It was a little bit spicy, just so you know, but it was really, really good. Highly recommend this book and this series. And then also in April, we read Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. I ended up giving this book 4.25 stars. It did not reach the 5-star rank for me that these other books did because it is the first fantasy book that we're actually mentioning here. It was a really fun fantasy novel to get into and fantasy world to get into. It basically takes place in Sicily, and there's 2 twin witches, very Twitches vibes, but they're sort of hiding and undercover because people don't really trust. Boyfriend's calling me. Hello? Anyway, this is a fantasy series about 2 twin witches that live in Sicily, but they're hiding in Sicily because people are very scared of witches in this time period. And basically what happens is one of the twins, Amelia, just happens upon her sister, Victoria, who was brutally. She is trying to seek out who did this, why they did this, and how to get revenge on them. And in doing that, she enlists the help of one of the 7 princes of hell that are named after the 7 deadly sins, which I thought is a really fun little plot area. And she ends up summoning one of the princes of hell of House Wrath. His name is Wrath. The story goes from there. Of course, a romance is a little bit in there. It is an enemies to lovers, kind of lovers, and not really. You can't really call it lovers. You could tell it's going in that direction. They hate each other just on the basic point of witches and the princes of hell don't get along. But also Amelia is just like on this path to get revenge, and she just doesn't want to hear anything from anyone, so she's just treating him terribly. And he's actually really sweet in this book, and it actually got a little bit annoying. I think that's why I didn't give it the 5 stars, because I was like, I get it, he is a prince of hell, but it's been months of him being so nice and sweet to you. Like, give him a break. And every time he's being nice, she's like, no, he's not. She like talks herself out of it, and it was a little bit annoying to me. But that is why it has 4.25 stars. I'm still gonna finish the series. I have the 2 other books waiting for me in my reading room. So yeah, this is a fun little fantasy world to get into. And then moving into the books that we read in May, the first one I read is Something Wilder by Christina Lauren. Actually, my most recent video, my summer TBR, I talked about this book. I gave it 4 stars. It is very Outer Banks vibes, which is what I said in the other video. It is about a girl who has a treasure hunting father who's very famous for his treasure hunting skills, and then she has a romance when she's younger on her ranch. And then it flashes forward 10 years in the future. They're no longer in the romance. She hates the guy that she was with. We don't know why yet. She leads these tours along the Outlaw Trail for a living. One of the people that come on the tours is the ex-boyfriend. There was a complete miscommunication, so she just thinks that he like never called her back. But then we find out that there were other things involved on his end. That sort of comes to light. So there's that romance underlying, but it's a lot more of an adventure book. Basically, they find out that Lily's father, Duke, supposedly found Butch Cassidy's treasure. He hid it somewhere and left like a map to follow to get that treasure. So then it goes on to an actual treasure hunt, and it's her and Leo trying to work together along with the other characters that are in there. So it was a really fun adventure series to read about, and I highly recommend this as long as you don't go into it looking for a romance, because it's not really a romance book. I wouldn't put it under the category of romance, but it's a very fun summer read, and the covers just make me so happy and so excited for summer. And then we're going to talk about two books at the same time, because it is The Summer I Turned Pretty and It's Not Summer Without You, which are the first two books in the Summer I Turned Pretty series, and now I'm on the last book, We'll Always Have Summer. It has a Prime Video series out as well, and if you don't know the story, I would be actually very, very surprised and probably not believe you, because it is everywhere. It was everywhere last summer. It was like super popular last summer, which is when I bought these books, but I finally got around to actually reading them full through just recently. I think I gave this a 4-star and a 3.5 star. The first book a 4-star, the second book a 3.5 star, because it is a young adult series and I know the story because I watched the series on Prime Video like twice, so I know what happens. I really love reading books after watching like a movie or a TV series because I can very vividly picture it as I'm reading it. This one, it goes to like a past and present. One chapter's past, one chapter's present. And in the series, to make it more easy to follow, they sort of combine the past and present, which I really like that change. This is about Belly Conklin. Every single summer, she goes to a summer house with her mom's best friend, Susanna, and Susanna's boys, Conrad and Jeremiah. Belly has been in love with Conrad for as long as she can remember, but this is a very coming of age story. She's starting to look like a 16-year-old and not like a little kid like these boys are used to, so they're trying to look at her a little bit differently. This story starts basically right after this book ends, and then the second book is about something that was alluded to in the first book has happened. This book, Conrad and Belly had a brief relationship after the summer, but you know, a bunch of things happened and that fell apart. So now this is like the first summer that Belly's not really gonna spend at the summer house. But suddenly Conrad disappears from his summer school, so Jeremiah calls up Belly and is like, Conrad's gone, can you help me find him? So then Belly ends up still spending her summer with Jeremiah and Conrad. I didn't love this book as much. I didn't love the turn it took as much as I love this book. I feel like I wasn't as connected to the characters in this book, which is why I had a lower rating than this first book. But I am interested to see how they're gonna adapt that in the series, which I think is supposed to be coming out next month in June. So I'm so excited for that now that I read this book. But it is a very summer vibey story, highly recommend it for summer, but it is young adult, so it reads like a young adult book, just so you know. And then a massive switch that I made from these light summer books is I read Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings. This is the second book in the Magnolia Parks universe. Magnolia Parks is the first book. This is Daisy Hates. It's the second book. Takes place at the same time as the Magnolia Parks book, but it's from Daisy Hates' perspective. And you get 3 perspectives in here. You get Daisy, Daisy's brother Julian's, and Christian, who is part of like the box set of Magnolia's friends, and he was mentioned in that friend group in Magnolia Parks, so you get his point of view in this book. First of all, it had just as many amazing quotes as Magnolia Parks, but I actually didn't completely finish this book. I'm on the last chapter, so I am definitely gonna finish it today. It's May 26th, so I'm still counting this in on the books I read in May because it is so good. What do I even say about this book? Like, how do you go from these 3 little summer books to Daisy Hates? It's a 5-star book, let me just say that. If you're thinking about completely skipping Daisy Hates to go straight into the next Magnolia book, don't. Because this has so much information in it, and it does have a little bit more story than when Magnolia Parks cut off. This goes on for a little bit longer in the timeline, so if you don't read this book, you'll be very confused with the Magnolia Parks book too. It did take me a little bit longer to get into because I do love Magnolia Parks just a bit better than Daisy Hate's story, but I hear that Daisy Hate's second book, which I have also waiting for me in my reading room, Daisy Hates the Great Undoing, is amazing. So I can't wait to get into this book. This book, I mean, it was 5 stars still. Like, it was amazing. Basically, it's about Daisy Hates, who her brother is the biggest crime lord in all of London, and she serves as such a foil to Magnolia, who you grew to know in the first book. Daisy's story is just completely so much different than Magnolia's story and how she grew up and everything. She has a lot more tragedy in her life than we know about Magnolia so far, and she sort of doesn't have those like rose-colored glasses that Magnolia has, but she's very realistic person, realistic point of view, which I really liked seeing. And we also see a little bit of the BJ Magnolia relationship in here with Daisy and her childhood sweetheart Romeo, who is also in the crime world. They're the ones that are sort of always like going back to each other because they have so much history. This book, I would say, is a lot darker than Magnolia Parks, but it was very, very good, and I highly recommend this book, and I can't wait to finish it. I just left off on a complete cliffhanger, and I just need to know what happens, but I only have one more chapter left, so I wanted to like save it. But yes, 5-star read, Daisy Hates. And that is all 8 of our books that we read this past April and May. That brings us to the end of this reading wrap up. I've been talking for like half an hour and I need a drink very badly. But yeah, I feel like we had a really good reading month. We had like 1, 2, 3, 4 5-star reads, which is pretty good. That's like half. So that's like really good. Thank you so much for talking with me about books. It's my favorite thing to do. And let me know what you read this past couple months in the comments, because I just love all the book talk that happens. I recommend all these books, honestly. These 3 are definitely summer books. This book, I just recommend, like, in general, I recommend the whole Magnolia Parks universe series. Kingdom of the Wicked is a good fantasy. Fine Print is also part of a very, very, very popular series. Those are all 8 books that we read these past 2 months. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.